Yo, what's going on, man? It's Matt.
Hey, Matt, right on time there. How's it going?
How are you doing?
I asked first. I asked how you're doing. You need to answer.
I'm pretty good, all things considered.
Exactly. What is keeping you busy at the moment besides fatherhood out there?
Man, just sort of starting to get back into making some music, but definitely the first month of this whole thing, primarily just taking care of the family and being home.
Now, all of your immediate family is still on Long Island?
My brother is in Boston, so pretty close by, and then my folks are still in Long Island.
Got it. So I assume you've been there just in LA for the last month and a half or so and just checking in with everyone remotely like everybody?
That's been it. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. We were on tour in February and we came through Long Island, and then a matter of weeks later, 2 weeks later, it was just kind of the war zone, and everything sort of started unfolding. So really, really all surreal.
Right. So I'm somebody who's been following your career for a long, long, long time, even seeing you play at the downtown in Bandcamp. Do you find a
Oh
lot of
man.
people make that connection that that is the same Matt?
Not a ton, but I mean, yeah, it does happen, um, especially now playing in a band that's a little bit closer to the world that I started off in. I feel like I run into people here and there who are like, "Oh, I saw you 15 years ago when you were a kid, or 10 years ago when you were a kid in this band." But not super often by any stretch, but a couple of times, and it's always really sweet.
And somebody who's been following you knows that you have a real multifaceted career in terms of you have Winnetka Bowling League, you have the songwriting stuff, you have the producer stuff. When was it that you made the journey or the decision that you were going to work with other artists instead of just being your own guy?
Honestly, I think pretty early on, I had the opportunity to start working with other artists, like maybe even before Bandcamp had a record deal. Like when I was really young, like 16 or 15, just people sort of around me being like, "Hey, do you want to work with so and so and write a song for, some artist or whatever?" And I kind of got introduced into that world pretty early. So it wasn't necessarily a decision of one or the other. It was sort of like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that sometimes when it feels appropriate and it feels fun." And I'll always put my artist career and that vision first, but I enjoyed working with other people too. I always liked that experience of helping somebody else kind of execute their vision. Um, so yeah, I feel like it kind of grew maybe alongside each other, and at different points in my career, one has taken the front seat.
And we have a mutual friend in Mike Viola who does something similar in that he's a solo artist and a producer and writes for other people. When was it that you realized that that was going to be the path of this multifaceted thing instead of just having a couple of cuts?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's funny. Everything obviously in hindsight is so much clearer, and when you're focused on one thing, even if you're succeeding in other avenues or lanes, it's hard to see it for what it is, because you're sort of, at least for me, I was always focused on, like, okay, I'm an artist and I want to make records that come out and resonate with people. And as I was first signing with Interscope and sort of working on my first solo records, I was seeing the other thing accelerate, which was co-writes or features on other people's records. So I feel like I was always just sort of focused on the absence of the thing I didn't have that I wanted. Um, and maybe it's not until the past year or two that I've kind of figured out, like, okay, I'm sort of getting to do all the things that 14-year-old me wanted to do. It looks different than maybe I envisioned it, but I'm really appreciative to be able to do both, and to have a band that is really fulfilling, and is a version of me getting to do what I think is a really authentic side of myself, but also getting to exercise the other things through production or through co-writes.
And that band just put out the single and the video for Kangaroo. When did you make the video?
Well, we didn't put a video out yet. We're putting out a video in, I guess, like 2 weeks, but we all filmed it in quarantine because, for obvious reasons, everybody's sort of having to make do with what they have. So the same director that's directed a bunch of our videos, we went to him and we're like, "Hey, we sort of had this idea of how we want to go about this. Could you give us some tips so we don't totally blow it?" And then we sent him just the footage of sort of what we all shot individually, and he edited it together.
Got it. My confusion was the link in the press release for the CVS video.
That makes sense. Yeah. That we shot. I guess we shot that in January, right before we went on tour. Like top of the new year, we shot that video.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to ask about it, but the band name, Winnetka, people who are up on pop culture know that a lot of the John Hughes movies took place there. And of course, in the jazz world, Big Noise from Winnetka, that's kind of the namesake of that. But where did that come from your band?
So maybe about 4 years ago, I was living up in Woodland Hills, which is really deep valley of Los Angeles. And one of my really close friends, Chris, has been a bowler his whole life, and he bowls with his father and his brother on a team, on a league. And he's like, hey, do you want to join our league? I'm like, I've never bowled in my life. I'm terrible. I shouldn't, and I shouldn't do that to your team. That's probably really good. But he's like, no, it'd be fun, and you should just do it. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I joined the bowling league, which was in Winnetka, California, and it was called Winnetka Bowling League. And I was on the team for like a year and a half, sort of while I was dreaming up this band and working on songs that would potentially work for it and sort of discovering what the sound was. And when I finished the demo for the first song that kind of felt like it was the direction for the band, it was called On the Five. And I just was on my way to bowling that night. So I just labeled the artist when I did like a rough mix for the car. I just labeled it Winnetka Bowling League, and it just sort of stuck.
Well, that leads me to two follow-up questions in different areas. The first one is, did you actually get good at bowling? I
got way better. I still was nowhere near what my teammates were because they've been bowling their whole lives and they're freaking awesome. I got pretty good. I was less embarrassing as the season went on.
Was that your first foray to sports league?
I mean, I haven't played sports since I was in like middle school, and I sucked at every sport under the sun, but my parents made me do it.
Got it. And then the other end of what I want to know with the band name and all that is I just made the confusion that it was about Winnetka, Illinois. Is that something that's come up before?
Yeah, we get that a lot. We get a lot of people being like, especially in the Midwest, so like, wait, we have a town, Winnetka, and we're always like, oh, it's Winnetka, California, which is obviously a lot lesser known than Winnetka, Illinois, because of what you said exactly, all the John Hughes films.
And is there anything notable in Winnetka besides your bowling league?
I mean, I find it very close to my heart because I love it there, but I've gotten a lot of chuckles for living in Woodland Hills and hanging out in Winnetka, so I'm assuming not too much, but I think it's rad.
Right on. So as we talked about earlier, everything is kind of in flux right now, but do you know of any singles or projects that you have coming out besides the Kangaroo, prospectively the music video to that?
We have a whole EP coming out with the band that we're going to be releasing some tunes off of probably every couple of weeks because obviously nobody's playing shows right now, so just to sort of stretch that process out, I think we're going to be releasing like a song every 6 weeks or whatever. And yeah, there's some other stuff coming out that I worked on towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year. I just don't know how much of it's like announced yet and stuff. So I usually keep my mouth quiet until the artist puts their stuff out. And then I'm like, hey, I got to be a part of this.
Bringing it back to you personally and your leisure, are there any shows or games or anything like that you discovered in all this time of being cooped up?
I mean, I think like the rest of the world, everybody's on the same page of Netflix and Tiger King and Ozark and all that stuff. And to be totally honest, from being not on the road for a minute, I've just gotten a lot of time with my kids, which has been incredible. So a lot of shows they're into. Our son is into the show called Clarence that we've been watching a ton of, and my daughter is obsessed with Frozen. So I wouldn't say new content, but definitely probably on like our 100th watch of Frozen and our 65th episode of Clarence.
Is there a lot of life for you outside of music and family?
Not really. No, not really, but that's not really different than it's ever been for me. I've always kind of been a workaholic and just really enjoy working hard and working on a lot of music. And outside of that, I've always had a super small group of friends that I enjoy, but I don't really have that many other hobbies. I think honestly, bowling was like the only time it was really significant for me because it was something I was investing time in that was outside of work or seeing my family. So not a ton. I read a lot when I'm on tour, but obviously when I'm home, it's harder to get the 3 hours of reading a day in. So that sort of takes a back seat. And lately it's just become more about being in the studio and working on tunes.
Well, two quick questions, and then you're a free man. And the first one is, you, as we talked about, got it early on a career path in music where you were writing for other people and had demo deals and whatnot. But was there ever a plan B of what would have happened if you hadn't found some of that early success?
Not really. I always sort of just knew I was going to figure out a way. And I think that's probably why I played so many different roles, whether it was, being the singer of a band or being the guitar player of a band or producing other artists or writing for other artists. I was always sort of doing that probably out of great fear of not having an avenue connect. And fast forwarding, I'm really grateful that a lot of those avenues have connected and have made for this kind of cool position to be in where I get to do a lot of the stuff I love. But no, I was always sort of dead set on I'll figure it out. There has to be a way to do it one way or another. So I'll just keep creating and keep working and not really pick my head up until I'm where I think I want to be. And of course, when you get there, you're not satisfied. So you put your head back down and just keep working.
Makes sense. That ongoing work ethic that got you to where you are. So in closing, any last words for the kids?
I mean, I think it's such a different game and such a different kind of completely world actually than it was when I was coming up. And it's really exciting and I think really cool to see how accessible the tools are for kids to express themselves in that form. We had to learn so much nonsense to record a really shitty demo when I was 14 on a 4-track. And it's really cool now to see that sort of fast-tracked and kids have the ability and accessibility to get things sounding better quicker and have the process be more focused on the creativity of songwriting or, soundscaping or whatever without having to sort of spend the 2 years of like figuring out like how shit technically works. So
right.
I don't even know if I could give any useful advice because I think like every generation, the kids who are meant to do it are going to work through all the hardships, and the love for music and the high that they get from doing that is always going to be greater than any sort of obstacle. And that's always been true. That's always been the commonality, I think, between every generation of musicians coming up with totally different circumstances and tools is just the desire is bigger than any punch to the face could be.
Paltrocast.